Alright everyone, the NEA, which is a very large teachers union, has decided to openly push critical race theory. That is, they have officially endorsed the use of critical race theory in K-12 public schools. Now, it's very interesting because as little as a few weeks ago we were told, no, we're not teaching critical race theory in schools. We might touch on some of the topics within it, minus the Marxism maybe, depending on if it's in San Francisco or not. But we're not pushing for it to actually be like in public schools, publicly funded, that people are going to be taught that every dynamic in the world boils down to the extremely primitive notion of an oppressor and an oppressee. We're not pushing something that self-proclaims itself as being influenced literally by Marxism in its own 5 points by its own founders, nor are we pushing something that is easily self-refuted. It is easily refuted and self-refuting on 2 of its points. We're not doing that. It's just we talk about some of the similar things like racial justice and togetherness and diversity, and they use all of these happy little buzzwords. Notice how they don't use terms like King Cotton 2.0, which is basically what it is in the sense of looking at U.S. history in the 19th century. No, they never use the term Marxist. The CRT's own academic founders do. They openly admit to it. Oh yeah, is partially influenced by Marxism. We think that this makes our conclusions, by the way, more strong. That is literally one of their points. Check out my video refuting their 5 points from the Vox article that literally lists it in the CRT people's own words. But now, clearly, I guess if the largest teachers union has adopted this concept, they are going to try to push it in public schools. See, that's a problem in several ways. Number one, CRT is not historical. It is ahistorical revisionist bunk. It's horseshit. Instead of teaching people, hey, this is the year Columbus did X, Y, and Z. This is the place in which this battle took place. This individual invented the modern blast furnace or something. Concrete, objective, easily established, correct things. Basically, it's just, you can memorize them for parlor games or something. That's basically what the educational system does. It teaches you how to memorize things. The things you memorize should at least be concrete. So 1 + 1 = 2. There's no reason that in math class you should have to analyze why math should be more woke. There's no point to it. In science, you know that mixing these 2 chemicals causes a reaction. Mixing those chemicals, it'll blow up in your face, so don't do it. And things like that. There's no reason to study the wokeness of chemistry. Well, here's a list of diverse professors that you need to remember existed and their birthdays and what they're known for, because that's more important than actually doing the chemistry. Now, you should be learning to do the actual chemistry and the actual calculations involved, which, whether the math side sucks, the mixing chemical side is cool. I wish I could do that all day, but then, eventually you do it wrong and it becomes a big problem. In biology, you should learn, hey, here's the different kingdoms, here's what a phylum is, and stuff like that. Instead, increasingly, it's just woke garbage. Here's your section on black professors of biology. You have to memorize them, and stuff like that. It's not meaningful. Critical race theory throws off all pretense of actually being history and is just revisionist bullshit. It is a literal subversion effort by Marxists. That is the truth. It claims Marxism as being one of its founding influences. Now, if the average American knew that, by the way, it wouldn't be something like 65-70% of Americans opposing critical race theory. In schools, it would be 90%. If people, were being honest about its origins. That should, by the way, be the main thing that you point out. Look, the people who develop critical race theory self-profess Marxist influence on their findings or analysis or whatever you'd loosely term it. Certainly not scientific. Then, the fact that it self-refutes. It shouldn't be funded further because it's discriminatory. It's quite literally, if you look at some of the things that are being proposed as part of this critical race theory in a more large sense, it basically boils down to white person bad. Not only is it ahistorical, it makes it completely hyperbolic in nature. Well, whiteness is basically the history of oppression. Everyone else, it's the history of the oppressor. By the way, we're going to use the same racial categories that our own system self-professes were developed to suppress people. and we're going to empower a government to do more about it, the same government that's run by evil, racist white people. It's very interesting how their logic fails to follow. That sort of bullshit should not be taught in schools. No, taxpayers should not have to fund crap that isn't real. It's one thing, let's say, because I can remember the dust-up over evolution being taught in schools. Evolution versus creation and intelligent design and stuff. By and large, still left up to the states, by the way. A lot of the curricula cover both. A lot of them do tilt towards intelligent design, by the way, including among mainline people who are very scientific. I'm not going to name names, but I had one teacher who was very much a creationist, technically speaking, but still believed in evolution and was a teacher in science. They are technically capable of being reconciled, although you have to do a few logical hoops you have to jump through. Looking at it that way, things that are concrete, things that are able to be established, for evolution, for example, Darwin's finches and everything else, and inheritance through Mendel, these things can be established. There's a history there, there's science there, there were experiments conducted, Miller and Urey, for example, with the abiotic creation of organic compounds, leading to the development of the long-standing concept that organic things could only come from other organic things was then tossed aside, because you could create various amino acids, and then ammonia as a precursor, and all these other things, including lipid layers, phospholipid bilayers. The basic structure of the cell can be replicated without any life being involved, by the way. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how to get them to fuse together and start working like a life form. Very interesting concept. Those are all concrete things. Microevolution is beyond conjecture. We observe it all the time in a laboratory. At least that founding basis, the basic concept of a genetic bottleneck. We can observe these things in real time. You can say one creature doesn't turn into another. Okay, that's one very small component of evolution, although an important one, but the rest of it is concrete. You can observe it. With critical race theory, the problem is that the observation you're attempting to promulgate is the opposite of reality. The fact is that cotton did not build skyscrapers. The United States was not the largest absorber of transatlantic slave trade. And if slavery builds great economies, then you'd wonder, why is it that in, let's say, Nigeria, where there are millions of slaves, not a wealthy country, it's developing, but it's the areas that are developing are the areas Boko Haram doesn't enslave people in. I wonder why. Libya should be more wealthy than it was under Gaddafi, because there's like 500,000 slaves there. What about Haiti? There's all sorts of slavery that goes on there. Why is it so poor? In fact, there's an inverse correlation. Slavery not only doesn't help build an economy, it holds it back, especially post-industrial. Maybe it made sense 5,000 years ago when brute manpower that was expendable was basically the name of the game, but then people invented the gear and things like that. Force multipliers. They realized that domestic animals were stronger than humans and could do more work. So then they developed animal husbandry at a quicker level. Then they domesticated cats when they switched to grain from hunter-gatherer lifestyle back when a dog was more useful. Anyway, critical race theory we can observe is wrong. And that's just one small component of it. The whole, oppression-oppressee power dynamic that it professes has nothing to do even with history. If you're pushing it as basically civic historical and legal to an extent, well, then you're teaching people wrong. It'd be like teaching people English, but then you throw in a bunch of words in other languages and call it diversity. No, you're creating maybe an interesting language Creole, but it's not English you're teaching them. Math, well, 2 plus 2 can equal 3 under some circumstances because we've got to keep an open mind. Well, no, it doesn't. Critical race theory would lead to a generation of historically stunted students, even more than the dumbed-down curricula we've already got. Have you ever taken a basic history course? It's completely dumbed down. It only skims the most basic concepts of history. You have to get into at least a college prep course before you're being ably taught in any field. When you're taking basic English, it's a throwaway course, essentially. Now, I realize not everyone is. Maybe some person, they're really good at English, but they suck at math or something. That's why the basic course exists. But by and large, our educational system has already been dumbed down. We don't challenge students enough. Then you want to push critical race theory. The fact is the teachers' union should be abolished. They should be completely disbanded. Half the time they go on strike. Oh, I want more salary. I want more freebies. Give me more shit because teacher is important. I want a one-on-one teacher-to-student ratio. Pay me a fucking $1 million a year to teach people and not even teach them well. This is why private schools, if you have a kid, you should probably take him out of the public school system, if you can, and put him in private school. Fuck, at this point, take an extra part-time job to pay the fucking tuition. At least they'll be better trained. They'll probably be trilingual when they graduate. They're not going to be taking the filler. It's not offered. They're going to take the real courses and get the real skinny on what goes on. Hell, you'll get a better education. I never thought I'd come to the moment where I'd say this, but you probably would get a better education at a religious high school now than in the average public school, the way the education system is being subverted. That's about all. Peace out.